Psalms 25 and Psalms 80 for us all. And then we'll jump straight into the presentation today, which will be called The Story of the Covenants. You got the flow, brother.
Go ahead and get started.
Okay. As my brother stated, I would like everyone to turn to Psalms 25, please. Can you hear me good, brother?
Yeah.
He reads, "Unto thee, O Yahweh, do I lift up my soul. O my Elohim, I trust in thee. Let me not be ashamed. Let not my enemies triumph over me. Yea, let none that wait on thee be ashamed. Let them be ashamed which transgress without cause. Shew me thy ways, O Yahweh. Teach me thy paths. Lead me in thy truth, and teach me. For thou art the Elohim of my salvation. On thee do I wait all the day. Remember, O Yahweh, thy tender mercies and thy loving kindnesses, for they have been ever of old. Remember not the sins of my youth, nor my transgressions. According to thy mercy, remember thou me for thy goodness' sake, O Yahweh. Good and upright is Yahweh. Therefore will he teach sinners in the way. The meek will he guide in judgment, and the meek will he teach his way. All the paths of Yahweh are mercy and truth unto such as keep his covenant and his testimonies. For thy name's sake, O Yahweh, pardon mine iniquity, for it is great. What man is he that feareth Yahweh? Him shall he teach in the way that he shall choose. His soul shall dwell at ease, and his seed shall inherit the earth. The secret of Yahweh is with him, with them that fear him, and he will shew them his covenant. My eyes are ever toward Yahweh, for he shall pluck my feet out of the net. Turn thee unto me, and have mercy upon me, for I am desolate and afflicted. The troubles of my heart are enlarged. O bring thou me out of my distresses. Look upon my affliction and my pain, and forgive all my sins. Consider my enemies, for they are many, and they hate me with cruel hatred. O keep my soul and deliver me. Let me not be ashamed, for I put my trust in thee. Let integrity and uprightness preserve me, for I wait on thee. Redeem Israel, O Elohim, out of all his troubles. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
I would love everyone to turn to Psalms 80, please. That's Psalms 8:0. It reads, "Give ear, O shepherd of Israel, thou that leddest yourself like a flock, thou that dwellest between the cherubims, shine forth. Before Ephraim and Benjamin and Manasseh, stir up thy strength, and come and save us. Turn us again, O Elohim, and cause thy face to shine, and we shall be saved. O Yahweh Elohim of hosts, how long wilt thou be angry against the prayer of thy people? Thou feedest them with the bread of tears, and givest them tears to drink in great measure. Thou makest us a strife to our neighbors, and our enemies laugh among themselves. Turn us again, O Elohim of hosts, and cause thy face to shine, and we shall be saved. Thou hast brought a vine out of Egypt. Thou hast cast out the heathen and planted it. Thou preparest room for it before it, and didst cause it to take deep root, and it filled the land. The hills were covered with the shadow of it, and the boughs thereof were like the goodly cedars. She sent out her boughs unto the sea, and her branches unto the river. Why hast thou then broken down her hedges, so that all they which pass by the way do pluck her? The boar out of the wood doth waste it, and the wild beast of the field doth devour it. Return, we beseech thee, O Elohim of hosts, look down from heaven, and behold, and visit this vine, and the vineyard which thy right hand hath planted, and the branch that thou madest strong for thyself. It is burned with fire, it is cut down, they perish at the rebuke of thy countenance. Let thy hand be upon the man of thy right hand, upon the Son of Man, whom thou madest strong for thyself. So will not we go back from thee. Quicken us, and we will call upon thy name. Return us again, O Yahweh Elohim of hosts. Cause thy face to shine, and we shall be saved. Hallelujah! Hallelujah! Hallelujah!
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. And Shalom, Israel. Again, today's presentation is called The Story of the Covenants. And we are using this presentation today to bring out the framework of this story, what we call today the Bible, and let the listening audience know that this covenant or this story is bodied within a covenant or several covenants. So today we're going to speak on a few of these covenants, and we're going to compare what we find in our Bible in this story and learn what the covenants consist of, and also learn that we are not, when I say we, the listening audience, are not under the covenants today. There is an everlasting covenant that we will find in this story, which allows us to have hope in the Creator of the heaven and earth, and allow us to understand our Bible much better than what we have. I would like to start off this presentation by us all turning to Proverbs 2. Before we do, or while we are turning our pages, I would like to thank the Creator of the heaven and earth and everything therein is by saying hallelujah, and pray that the Almighty allow the words of our mouth and the meditation of our heart to be acceptable in His sight, that this day we may fear Yahweh and depart from evil. It tells us in Proverbs 2, if we all turn there, please. And with the words of wisdom, it allows us to know the rewards of wisdom and the rewards of obeying the Almighty covenants. We will give the definition of the covenant, or the term covenant, that is found in your Hebrew concordance after we read these few words of wisdom, and then we will apply this presentation to the word covenant and allow us to see what Yahweh has said in this great story that we call today the Bible. It tells us in Proverbs 2, starting at the very first verse, and it reads, "My son, if thou will receive my words and hide my commandments with thee." And note that Proverbs is the words of Solomon. So these words were not actually spoken to the world, but spoken to the people that Yahweh made a covenant with. A covenant is a neutral agreement. It can be called or considered a pact. It can be considered an agreement. It can even be considered as a contract. And the Almighty made this contract with these people. And today in Proverbs 2, we are reading the words of the people, Solomon himself, that Yahweh made the covenant with. Thus, it reads again, "My son, if thou will receive my words and hide my commandments with thee, so that thou incline thy ear into wisdom, and apply thy heart to understanding. Yea, if thou criest after knowledge, and liftest up thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest her as silver, and search for her as for hid treasures, then shall thou understand the fear of Yahweh, and find the knowledge of Elohim. For Yahweh gives wisdom, out of his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. And this day we pray that Yahweh open up our ears and our eyes, that we may be a recipient of this great wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. He lays up sound wisdom for the righteous. He is a butler to them that walk uprightly. He keeps the paths of judgment and preserves the way of his saints. Then shall thy understand righteousness and judgment and equity, yea, every good path. When wisdom enter into thy heart, and knowledge is pleasant into thy soul, discretion shall preserve thee, understanding shall keep thee. And this discretion that preserves and this understanding that keeps allows us to know that it is available to deliver thee from the way of the evil man, from the man that speak forward things, and the things that the Almighty considers forward are those things which he has not spoken. And there are a lot of rumors, forward rumors, that have passed among us. And unfortunately, many of us find ourselves stuck in this forwardness, which discretion and understanding supposed to preserve thee from. It tells us in the 13th verse of the 2nd chapter of Proverbs, who leave the paths of uprightness to walk in the way of darkness. So these forward things only denote darkness. Who rejoice to do evil and delight in the forwardness of the wicked. Whose ways are crooked, and they forward in their path, to deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger which flatters with her words, which is another form of forwardness, things that Yahweh hate, which forsake the guide of her youth, and forgetteth the covenant of her Elohim. And this covenant that is forgotten is the agreement to keep you on the right path. It is the agreement that the children of Israel made with the Creator himself to be in total obedience, to be the recipient of the blessings and the promises that Yahweh had made with the children of Israel and their fathers, and a covenant or a contract. And it continues to tell us in the 18th verse about these people forgetting the covenant of their Elohim. For her house inclined into death. It seems like you don't have a choice if you're not under the covenant. And if you have forsaken the covenant, you will find your house whole, inclined into death, and her paths into the dead. None that go into her return again once the covenant has been forgotten, once the covenant is broken. Neither take they hold of the paths of life, because the paths of life denotes obedience to all the words of the covenant, that thou mayest walk in the way of good men, and keep the paths of the righteous. There is only one path of the righteous, and that path has been selected only by the Elohim of the heaven and earth himself. For the upright shall dwell in the land based on the covenant, based on the contract that has been made with Yahweh and the children of Israel. And the perfect, those that in obedience, those that confirm and acknowledge and witness every word, it reads, and the perfect shall remain in it, the covenant that Yahweh has made with Israel. But the wicked, those that break the covenant, those that disregard the right path, those that are forward in their own heart, it reads, but the wicked shall be cut off from the earth, and the transgressors, those that sin against the covenant, shall be rooted out of it. Not just rooted out of the covenant, but rooted out of the land, that particular geographical location that denotes this great covenant. It also tells us, Israel, if we take a look at Psalms 78 in introducing this presentation, which is called again the story of the covenants, it tells us in Psalm 78, if we all turn there, please, and it reads in the first 8 verses again, and it tells us, we that have ears that can hear, give ear, O my people, to my law. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, the sayings that were said to man when Yahweh spoke and made these covenants with man. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard. And this we is none other than the children of Israel. And known, and our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, have told us. We will not hide them from their children, the children of Israel, showing to the generation to come the praises of Yahweh. So it allows us to know that the Almighty allowed these words to be known to the children, to the generations that come, the praises of Yahweh and his strength and his wonderful works that he have done. For again, no one have made a covenant with man but the Creator himself. The 5th verse reads, for he established a testimony in Jacob. These same testimonies is what our brother Yamin read in the Psalms that he read, speaking about the covenant and the testimonies that were to always be kept. For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he alone commanded our fathers, that they should make them known to their children. And over the times, we have had a Bible produced. And in this Bible, we find these great wonders. We find these great testimonies and commands that were to be made known into our children. That the generation to come, each generation, might know them, even the children which should be born. And these children that should be born was to be born under this covenant, unless their fathers had disobeyed, who should arise and declare them to their children. Not so as we are today, arising, being born in hell and darkness, and trying to declare the covenant, the testimonies, the law, and the commands to our children and in our generation, because our children don't find themselves under the covenant of the law. But in our search and in our fear of the Creator and studying the words that we find in this great story, we are to reveal the truth. We are to reveal to the generation that seek the truth nothing but the truth. And unfortunately, in this time, in this plight, we have to witness to our children that we are born in hell, that our teeth are set on edge, not because we have entered the covenant of the law and have broken it, but because we wait, we hope that one day we will be able to witness the truth, to be able to be obedient to every word of the Creator of the heaven and earth by entering into this great covenants that we're about to read about today, that our fathers, the children of Israel, entered and broke. Thus it tells us again in the 6th verse that the generation to come might know them, even the children which should be born, who shall arise and declare them to their children. And there's nothing wrong with declaring them today, even though you're not under them, because it still witnesses and acknowledges and confirms the voice of our Creator, the will of the Elohim of the heaven and earth, that our children might know what was required of our fathers under this great covenant. Thus it tells us in the 7th verse that they might set their hope in Elohim. Because again, the words of wisdom found in the book of Ecclesiastes tells one that Yahweh required that which have passed. And with our search of knowledge and our search of being redeemed and forgiven, when we read these words and declare them into our children, it is that we might set our hope in Elohim and not forget the works of Yahweh, but keep his commandments. And saying that we hope that Yahweh will save us, will redeem us based on what we have read and understood and applied those great wonders to us, and remembering the covenant once again. Thus it reads in the 8th verse, and that will be the last verse that I will read out of this great psalm. It tells us, and might not be as their fathers. And that's what we hope in this day, that we have the opportunity one day to observe the covenant of the law, that we can do better than what our fathers did, that our resume will not have disobedience on it, that we can be the example of the will of our Creator by being obedient to every word, having the heart and spirit to walk righteously and together with our Creator. Thus it reads in closing of the 8th verse, and might not be as their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that set not their heart aright, and whose spirit was not steadfast with Elohim. Well, again, this presentation is going to show how our fathers did not steadfast with Yahweh. And it will allow us to see that their hearts was not aright. And in the story of the covenants, we will see what that brought forth and how their children's teeth wind up on edge, and how we today, this generation, find ourselves born in hell, needing to be saved out of it. I would like to go to one more place in the Psalms, and that will be Psalms 50. And it tells us in Psalms 50, based on what we just read in Proverbs 2 and Psalms 78, it continues to tell our fathers and their children the plight that Israel took, which was forward to our Creator. And it tells us in the 50th chapter of Psalms, I'll pick up at the very first verse, and it reads, "The mighty Elohim even Yahweh has spoken, and called the earth from the rising of the sun and to the going down thereof. Out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, Yahweh have shined. Our Elohim shall come and shall not keep silent, and he have not. We are a witness that Yahweh have spoken, and that Yahweh have not kept silent, and Yahweh have done all that he said he will do. A fire shall devour before him, and it shall be very temperate round about him. He shall call to the heavens from above as he have, and they have witnessed all that he have said and done. He shall call to the heavens from above and to the earth, that he may judge his people. Gather my saints together, and to me. And who was these great saints? It reads, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. And the heavens shall declare his righteousness. For Elohim is the judge himself, Selah, and our fathers have truly been judged. The children of Israel that entered into a covenant with the creator of the heaven and earth have truly been judged because they failed to hearken. They failed to repent. They failed to return to the right path. The 6th verse reads, and the heavens shall declare his righteousness, for Elohim is the judge himself, Selah. Hear, O my people, and this people was none other than the children of Israel. Even though Yahweh is the creator of the heaven and earth and every people therein, he did not make the covenant with everyone, as the story of the covenant will reveal this day. But those that he chose out of all the nations, for all the other nations was a drop in the bucket to the people that he hath chosen. Thus the 7th verse of the 50th chapter of Proverbs read, hear, O my people, and I will speak. And it allows us to know exactly who he is talking to. For it reads, O Israel. And I will testify against thee. We know in the book of Amos it tells us in the 3rd chapter, in the 2nd verse, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore, the reason why I will punish you for all your iniquities. So it allows us to know exactly who Yahweh is speaking to. And when we call ourselves witnessing for the Creator based on what we find in this great story called the Bible, we must acknowledge and confirm every word. So if it's talking to the children of Israel, then that's what we must teach. We can't say it's talking to the world. We can't say it's talking to the black man. We must confirm what is written in this great story. Thus it tells us, hear, O my people, and I will speak. O Israel, and I will testify against thee. I am Yahweh, even thy Elohim. I will not reprove thee, correct thee for thy sacrifices, or thy burnt offerings, to have been continually before me. And we that read the story know that the Israelites had even laws of burnt offerings and laws of sacrifices, and that was to be brought forth to our Creator. And here it witnesses that it was, and it was brought forth continually. I will take no bullock out of thy house, nor he goats out of thy folds. For every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle upon 1,000 hills. I know all the fowls of the mountains, and the wild beasts of the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell thee. So the offerings and the sacrifices was not given to feed Yahweh, but instead they were given based on the instructions, based on the agreements that the children of Israel made with the Creator of the heaven and earth. If I were hungry, I would not tell thee, for the world is mine, and the fullness thereof. Will I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats? Absolutely not. Offer unto Elohim thanksgiving, that which is required, obedience, and pay thy vows unto the Most High, that which have come out of your mouth. And there were words of agreement that came out of the children of Israel's mouths, which denoted the covenant that Yahweh had made only with them. And call upon me in the day of trouble. Under these great covenants, the children of Israel was only to call upon Yahweh. They were never to call upon anything other than the Creator of the heaven and earth. And in doing so would be a great breach against the covenant of the law. And call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver thee, and thou shalt glorify me. But into the wicked, all of those that are not under the covenant of the law, and have not walked in the path that Yahweh has set for those that were under the covenant. It says, but into the wicked, Elohim said, what hast thou to do to declare my statutes, or that thou should take my covenant in thy mouth? And today, as all of our presentations have been presented, is to make a distinction between what we read in this great story called the Bible and the forwardness of our mouths today. We are to compare what Yahweh said and what our fathers did based on what we are saying and doing today. Because we that have been born in darkness is trying to find the light. And in this darkness, we have taught a lot of forward things. And one of the forward things that we have taught is that we are under the covenant of the law today. That we are to be obedient to every word that we find in this great story. And I named this presentation the story of the covenant because many of us, especially those that are teaching forwardness, does not understand that this is a story. And it is a story about a people and their Elohim. And this story states facts that has already happened upon the face of this earth. And the reader of the story and the teacher of the story is to read and teach what has happened and what has been done according to the life and time and place of the actual people of the story. This story was not written for anyone just to pick up and apply to themselves. And it's just about the only story that I know that people does so. It allows us to know the great error that man finds himself in, and when they are searching for the truth of this great Bible. Again, this great Bible framework is none other than these great covenants. Thus, it reads one more time in the 16th verse, but unto the wicked, Elohim said, what hast thou to do to declare my statutes, or that thou should take my covenant in thy mouth, especially when you don't have knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Seeing thy hatest instructions. And that's one of the biggest things I see in those that teach with a forwardness. I see that they hate instructions. They refuse to confirm every word. They refuse to take heed of the instructions that they must take heed to, knowing that the covenant is conditional. The covenant of the law was conditional. The covenant that was made with Abraham was unconditional. Thus, we must love the instructions to be able to apply sound wisdom to the instructions or to the covenant that is being made. Because we might be making a plague to a covenant that you just don't understand, that you don't understand that it was conditional, or that you don't understand that it was unconditional. So we were to love the instructions. That way we would not cast his words behind thee. If we don't acknowledge the instructions, that is forwardness. And that forwardness will have you casting the words of Yahweh behind thee and making you right in your own eyes. The 18th verse reads, when thou sawest a thief, just an example of one hating instructions, and an example of one casting the words of Yahweh behind thee. It tells us in the 18th verse, when thou sawest a thief, and a thief is a thief, no matter what he's stealing, robbing the bank or robbing the people. When thou sawest a thief, then thou consented with him, and has been partakers with adulterers. Thou givest thy mouth to evil, and thy tongue frames deceit. Thou sittest and speakest against thy brother. Thou slanderest thy own mother's son. These things has the children of Israel done. It reads, these things has thy done, and I kept silent. And the Almighty is allowing us to know that he is the judge, and he allowed us to know what transpired before he opened his mouth and rendered the righteous judgment against these forward generations that forsook his covenant. These things has thy done, and I kept silent. Though thy thoughtest that I was altogether such an one as thyself, but I will reprove thee and set them in order before thy eyes. And all that truth is found in this great story of the covenant. Now, consider this, ye that forget Elohim. And again, when we are being forward, when we don't love the instructions, we are forgetting our Creator. It says, now consider this, ye that forget Elohim, lest I tear you in pieces. And eventually, according to the story, our fathers forgot. Thus we have testimonies of Yahweh tearing them to pieces, and there be none to deliver. And the punishment, the curses that Yahweh have laid upon our fathers based upon the covenant, there have been none able to deliver us out of his hand, nor should it be. For Yahweh made a covenant with our fathers, and that covenant consisted of blessings and cursings. And Yahweh is righteous all the time, even when he must punish his forward children. Thus it reads again, now consider this, ye that forget Elohim, lest I tear you in pieces, and there be none to deliver. Whoso offer praises glorify me, and to him that orders his conversation aright will I show the salvation of Elohim. And today, as we always do when we present our presentations, we beg Yahweh to allow the words of our mouth and the meditation of our hearts to be acceptable in his sight, that we may lend an ear and hear and fear and depart from evil, that we may be shown the salvation of Yahweh. And saying that, again, this presentation is called The Story of the Covenants, and we will begin this great presentation by giving a definition that is found in your Hebrew concordance of the word covenant. And you can find this definition in your Hebrew concordance under 1285, and it is called Ber in Hebrew, BRIYTH, and in the sense of cutting, it is noted as a compact. It says because made by passing between pieces of flesh, which we will show that example with Abraham. It is also noted as a confederacy, a covenant, a lead, a feminine noun meaning covenant. It also denotes treaty. It denotes alliance and agreement. The word is used many times in the Holy Scriptures. Its basic use are outlined here. It describes covenants or agreements between and among human beings. Between Abraham and the Amorites, Abraham and the Philistines, Jacob and Laban, etc. The nations also was said to have made a covenant against Israel. And that covenant, or that saying of that covenant that the nations made against Israel, can be found in Psalms 83. It is used figuratively to depict a covenant with death, which you can find in Isaiah, the 28th chapter, or with the stones of the field. It denotes an alliance, ordinance, or agreement between persons. Reference to covenants between people include Abraham's military treaty with the Amorites, Genesis 14. Jonathan and David plague or friendship, 1 Samuel 18. David covenant with Abner, 2 Samuel 3. The covenant of marriage. The word bara is often preceded by the verb kara to express the technical idea of cutting a covenant. This word is used to describe Elohim's making a covenant with mankind. It may be an alliance of friendship. The covenant made between Elohim and humans define the basis of Elohim's character in the Holy Scriptures. They show the strength of his divine promise from Adam all the way to the exile and restoration. It is employed many times. Elohim's covenant with Noah in the form of a promise with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to increase their descendants, giving them Canaan and making them a blessing to the nations, with all Israel and Moses at Sinai, with the stipulations of the Ten Commandments, including the guiding cases in the book of the covenant. The words of this covenant were kept in the ark in the Holy of Holies. A covenant with Phinehas established an everlasting priesthood in Israel. It is used to refer to the covenant established with David in his house. An external covenant establishing David and his descendants as the inheritors of an everlasting kingdom. Jeremiah refers to a new covenant that Elohim will establish in the future. The concept is personified in a person, a servant who becomes the covenant of the people, which you can find in Isaiah 42:6 and Isaiah 49:8. In addition to the verb kara mentioned above, the verb quam is employed with bara, meaning to establish a covenant or to confirm a covenant. The word is used with Nathan to give, meaning to give or make a covenant. There are 5 other verbs used in this way, less often. A covenant could be transgressed or violated, but Yahweh never broke his covenants. He always remembered a covenant, and we're going to bring forth this remembrance of the covenants by showing what covenants Yahweh made with our fathers. There are 7 covenants. I am dealing with 5 of them today. The 5 that I will deal with is known as the Noahic covenant, the Abrahamic covenant, the Mosaic covenant, the Davidic covenant, and lastly, the New Covenant. And we will speak a few words on how our fathers entered the covenant as we read these words and show the truth of the matter, you are to compare what you know today and what has been taught to you today about you being under the covenant, and see if those things that have been taught to this generation are forward things. We are to learn from this story. We are not to apply this story to ourselves because it would not be truth. But we are to learn this story that we may declare the words of this story to our children and the generation to come, that we may have hope in Yahweh, that He, as I just stated in the last words in giving the definition of the word covenant, it reads, but Yahweh never broke His covenants. He always remembered a covenant. And the covenant that Yahweh always remembered denotes the everlasting covenant. And that covenant was made with our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Again, the covenant that we find in the Holy Scripture that many people call the Old Covenant was a conditional agreement with Elohim and Israel in the effect doing the law. Before we show the covenant made with Elohim and Israel in the effect of the law, I would like to show the covenant that Yahweh made with Abraham. And it tells us if we take a look in the book of Genesis, the 12th chapter, and it reads about how Yahweh encountered the house of Tyre. And in the house of Tyre there was found a great man by the name of Abraham. I am not actually going in geographical or chronological order. If I did, we will speak about Noah. Matter of fact, let's start with Noah. Let's go in the order that we find in this story of the covenants. Let us turn our Holy Scriptures to Genesis, the 9th chapter. Genesis, the 9th chapter. And it tells us in Genesis, the 9th chapter, dealing with a covenant, the first covenant that is made known in this great story of the covenants. And again, these covenants is the framework of your entire Holy Scripture. It tells us in Genesis, the 9th chapter, starting at the very first verse. And it reads, and Elohim blessed Noah, and this blessing came upon Noah after the flood, because Yahweh remembered Noah and every living thing. And he remembered that Noah walked in integrity, that Noah feared Elohim, that the generation of Noah, in the generation of Noah, Noah was just and perfect in his generations. And Noah walked with Elohim. And we have found in studying the story of the covenant, or what one calls the Bible, that Noah walked with Elohim, and that he feared Elohim, and that he eschewed evil. He did not walk in the ways of the multitude to do evil. Thus we find this covenant being made with him in the 9th chapter of Genesis. And it reads, and Elohim blessed Noah and his sons. It didn't say that Noah was perfect and his sons was perfect. It didn't say that Noah walked with Elohim and his sons walked with Elohim. But it shows the blessing that is placed on Noah for walking with Elohim, for fearing Elohim. And this blessing fell upon his children. Thus it reads, and Elohim blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, be fruitful, and multiply, and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moves upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. And surely your blood of your lives will I require at the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of man, at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whoso sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of Elohim made he man. And you be ye fruitful and multiply. Bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply therein. And Elohim speak and to Noah and to his sons with him, saying. So even though Noah is the one found perfect, the blessings was laid upon Noah in his house. And once these blessings and these words was laid upon Noah, we know that Noah's sons also heard these words because they are a recipient of the covenant and the blessings and cursings thereof. So you got to know them. You got to know what you're under. As I have stated many times, dealing with the covenants that we find written in our Holy Scriptures and the forward teachings that we find that have came with them, the people are saying that we are under these covenants without even knowing the condition and terms of the covenant. Not so with Noah, nor with his sons. For we just read that the Almighty speak into Noah and to his sons with him, saying. And what did he say? And what did they find out and agree on? It reads in the 9th verse, and I, behold, I established my covenant with you and with your seed after you. So the seed after you that is under the same covenant must know the same instructions. As we read in Psalm 50, they hate the instructions. They throw his law behind their back. Well, you can't be under a covenant without knowing the instructions, without knowing the conditions thereof. Thus, it tells us again in the 9th verse, and I, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you, and with every living creature that is with you, of the fowls, of the cattle, of every beast of the earth with you, from all that go out of the ark to every beast of the earth. And I will establish my covenant with you. Neither shall all flesh be cut off anymore by the water of a flood. Neither shall there anymore be a flood to destroy the earth. And Elohim said, this is the token, the sign of the covenant, which I make between me and you, and every living creature that is with you. So again, you cannot be under a covenant if the covenant was not made with you, and if you do not know or love the instructions thereof. For this first covenant that we have presented allows us to know that it was made with man, and the man that it was made with and his seed was Noah and his 3 sons. But it didn't just note the human. It also noted the animals that Yahweh made this covenant with. And these animals was not created after the covenant was made, but these animals was on the ark with Noah and heard the same words. Thus it reads, and they understood that Yahweh was making a covenant not just with the animals, but with humanity. It was a promise, a contract, that Yahweh will not destroy humanity again by way of a flood. Thus it reads in the 12th verse, and Elohim said, this is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I, the creator of the heaven and earth, will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And in our generations and generations before us, we have stories about floods on the earth, but none of those floods have ever been at the degree of what Yahweh said he will never do upon earth again. So we have floods, and we have knowledge of floods, but never the flood that can be compared to which Noah seen, and the flood that Yahweh made a covenant with Noah and every living animal, saying that it will not happen again. Here it is 2022, and the earth have not been destroyed. Even though man have been punished, the earth have not been destroyed, because Yahweh have promised that the earth will always be inhabited. It continues to tell us the 13th verse, I think I dropped off at, I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And note the 15th verse. And I, the Creator himself, will remember my covenant. It is always about Yahweh remembering the covenant. For it is Yahweh that has made the covenant with man, and not man making a covenant with Yahweh. According to the history of this story, as we search today, we will see that it has always been man that has broken the covenant. Yahweh have never broken a covenant, and man depend on Yahweh to remember his covenant again, as we are depending and hoping this day. It tells us in the 15th verse, and I will remember my covenant which is between me and you. So we see what a covenant is. The covenant is being defined. We see who is made and who made it and who it is made with. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between Elohim and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. And Elohim said unto Noah, this is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. So it allows us to see chronologically dealing with the story of the covenants. The first covenant that is made between Elohim and man and every living thing. It also allows us to know in our search about what is known as the Abrahamic covenant. The Abrahamic covenant can be found in Genesis, the 12th chapter. Let us all please turn our scriptures to Genesis, the 12th chapter. And it tells us in Genesis, the 12th chapter, if we all turn there, please. And please, at this time, if you haven't already, get yourself a pen and a piece of paper, of course, your holy scriptures, that you may jot down these most relevant scriptures that we are bringing forth today. Lately, we've been having problems getting the recordings up, so at least you will have the notes, the chapter and verses that you can readily go back and contact and get the understanding that you are looking for. It tells us in Genesis, the 12th chapter, I'll pick up at the Genesis, the 12th chapter. You can read Genesis, the 11th chapter. It allows us to know the story of the families of Noah and his 3 sons and how Tyre house came about through the house of Shem. And then you can pick up at the 12th chapter where we will begin at the very first verse. And it tells us in Genesis 12:1, now Yahweh has said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindreds, brothers, sisters, uncles, and from thy father's house, into a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation. And I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thy shall be a blessing. Note the conditions, the words of the conditions that Yahweh is promising this man. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curse thee. And in thee, Abram, shall all families of the earth be blessed. So allow him to know a great contract is being made, and this contract is so great, it is divinity, to where whoever curse him will be cursed, and whoever bless him will be blessed, and all the families of the earth shall be blessed only through Abraham and his seed. So, in hearing these great words, it reads, so Abram departed, as Yahweh has spoken unto him. And Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And note how old he was when Yahweh came to him. The things we're about to read about and the covenant that was not made with Abram for at least, as it is written, 75 years. So he done spent 75 years living in the country that he was in, of the Chaldees, in his father's house, and these great words was brought to him. And out of these great words, a great covenant was made with him from Yahweh himself. And in these great words, it tells us in the 5th verse, and Abram took Sarah, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, his nephew, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. And they went forth to go into the land of Canaan. And into the land of Canaan they came. And we are reading the instructions. And we don't want to be found hating the instructions. So we must take heed to every word of the instructions. And we see that your dwelling that Yahweh consists of cannot be wherever you are at, because Abram is being taken from Ur of the Chaldees, and he is being told where to go. Today, many of us have hated the instructions and have thrown the laws behind you, to where you are teaching people that Abram, Isaac, and Jacob, known as the children of Israel, dwellings is wherever they are at. Long as they do what Yahweh said, then they are fine wherever they are at. Well, we are dealing with the second covenant of the story. And in covenants that have been made thus far, you could not have been wherever you are at and say that that is your dwelling, nor could you say that's where Yahweh made the covenant with you. In these instructions, it plainly allows us to know the path that Noah and Abram was set on, and this path denotes obedience to these instructions. Anything else is nothing but forwardness, as we read in Proverbs 2. It continued to tell us in the 6th verse, and Abram passed through the land and to the place of Shittim and to the plain of Moreh, and the Canaanites was then in the land. So there were Canaanites already there in the land that Yahweh is promising and instructing Abram to journey. And Yahweh appeared unto Abram and said, and to thy seed will I give this land. And there built he an altar unto Yahweh, who appeared unto him. And he removed from thence into a mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west and Haiti on the east. And there he built an altar unto Yahweh, and called upon the name of Yahweh. And Abram journeyed, going on still toward the south. It also tells us, and pick up if we turn to the 15th chapter of Genesis. The 15th chapter of Genesis, still dealing with the Abrahamic covenant. And it tells us further, dealing with the Abrahamic covenant, in the very first verse it reads, after these things, the word of Yahweh came, the instructions of Yahweh came into Abram in a vision, saying, fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceedingly great reward. And Abram said, Master Elohim, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless? And the steward of my house is this Eleazar of Damascus. And Abram said, behold, to me thou hast given no seed, even though a covenant had been made about his house and his seed. And lo, one born, allowing us to know where the seed consists of, one born in my house is my hire. And behold, the word of Yahweh it says, And behold, the word of Yahweh came into him, saying, This shall not be thy hire, but he that shall come forth out of thy own bowels shall be thy hire. And the Almighty allow us to know in this instruction where our hire definitely come from, where our seed definitely come from. And it come by way of copulation. It come by way of one having a child. It tells us, and he brought him forth abroad and said, Look now toward heaven. Note the instructions. And tell the stars if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. And he believed, as we believe and hope this day, in Yahweh. And he counted it to him for believing, for willingly accepting the words of Yah for righteousness. And he said unto him, I am Yahweh, that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees, to give thee this land to inherit it. And we must take heed to these great instructions, and don't be one found thorn behind thee, saying that your dwellings is wherever you are at, because we love the instructions. And in this second covenant, we see the instructions being given, which will not denote that Abram's seed nor the Israelites' dwellings would be wherever they are at. But their dwellings will be and has been, since the words of this covenant, only of the land of Canaan. And he said, according to the 8th verse, Yahweh Elohim, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? To teach that your dwellings is wherever you are at is to deceive Abram. The same Abram that believed in Yahweh, and it was counted to him for righteousness. Well, it won't be righteousness if we teach that Abram dwellings is wherever he is at. Thus it reads in the 9th verse, and he said unto him, Take me an heifer. We read definitions dealing with the word barat, or covenant, and it denoted a cutting between two parts of flesh. Well, here's a great example, and one of the first examples dealing with Abram and his seed and the covenant made with Yahweh and Abram. And it reads in the 9th verse, and he said unto him, Take me an heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto him all these, following the instructions, and divided them in the midst, which denotes this cutting. And it's not just denoting the cutting of the animals, but the cutting of the covenant. and lay each piece one against another. But the birds divide he not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram. And lo, an horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land. No, a land, not the world, not many lands, but shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them. And it allows you to know that your dwelling can't be wherever you at. Your dwelling must denote the land that is yours, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. And as it read in Psalm 78, we were to declare these words to the generations to come, to their children, that they might have hope in Yahweh. And the hope that we hope to have is that Yahweh remembered the covenant that he made with this man. It tells us, and again in the 14th verse, and also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy father in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. These are the words that Yahweh covenanted with Abram. But in the fourth generation, they shall come highter again. The seed of Abraham is promised to come highter again in the fourth generation. And in understanding these instructions, we must ask ourselves, where are they coming to? What denotes that they shall come highter again? And what denotes that is where Abram and Yahweh is making the covenant. Abram finds himself in the land of Canaan. We read in the 12th verse that they journeyed to the south. We went straight to the 15th chapter. We find out in the 12th chapter, I said the 12th verse. In the 12th chapter of Genesis, now we find ourselves in the 15th chapter of Genesis. And the Almighty is making a covenant with Abram. And he is telling them that his seed, that he's going to live his days and die and be buried with his fathers. But in the fourth generation, they should come here highter. It's not talking about Abram, because Abram will be buried with his fathers. But it is talking about his seed. And in explaining these terms about his seed, it continued to allow us to know that Abram, Isaac, and Jacob, and the children of Israel dwellings was only to be in the land of Canaan, according to the covenant that Yahweh made with our fathers. Thus it reads in the 16th verse, but in in the fourth generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And note, it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. This is a symbolic symbol of the covenant being cut or made. In the same day, Yahweh made a covenant with Abram, saying, "Into thy seed have I given this land." Again, the land, the dwellings of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the children of Israel has and always will be the land of Canaan. So we're not going to hate the instructions. We're going to love them, and we're going to confirm them and hope in them. It continued to tell us, in the same day Yahweh made a covenant with Abram, saying, "Into thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt into the great river, the river Euphrates." And note the geographical location, the areas. And you are to circle this, because when we deal with the everlasting covenant and Yahweh remembering the covenant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, your hope should be that the seed will return back to this particular geographical location, every inch of it. Thus it reads in the 19th verse, the Kenites and the Kenzites and the Chemonites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Rephites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Gershites and the Jebusites. This 7 great nations, these 7 great areas consist of the great promise and covenant that Yahweh made with our fathers, Abram, Isaac, and Jacob, which seed was called the children of Israel. So we see in this second covenant of the story what was made, and we read in the definition of the covenant in your Hebrew concordance that Yahweh have not broken any covenants. If that is true, and we hope and know it is, we know that our hope is that Yahweh will remember the covenant again and bring us all back to our own dwelling, which consists of nothing but what was instructed in this great covenant. We also find what is known as the Mosaic covenant, named after the lawgiver Moses. And we can find, if we turn our Holy Scriptures to Exodus, the 19th chapter. Exodus, the 19th chapter. In Exodus, the 19th chapter, we find another covenant, being made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's seed, which is known as the children of Israel. And they were told these great words in the making of this great covenant. If we all turn to Exodus, the 19th chapter. And as we are reading, we are supposed to be evaluating what we are reading and trying to compare what we have read thus far with the forward rumors and teachings that we have received. Because we want to witness for our Creator, and we want it to be truth. And the only way you're going to be able to do so is to read and accept all that you have read. Thus, it tells us in Exodus, the 19th chapter, if we all turn there, please. And it tells us in the book of Exodus, after the 400 years was done, after Abram's seed found themselves in a land that was not theirs, being strangers, being servants and afflicted, and Yahweh remembering every word of the covenant that he made with Abraham, thus he judged those whom his seed had served. In Exodus, the 19th chapter, we find these words spoken to the seed of Abraham. And the words we are about to read, again, is known as the Mosaic Covenant. And it reads in Exodus, the 19th chapter, the very first verse, in the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. For they were departed from Rephidim and were come to the desert of Sinai, and had pitched in the wilderness. And there Israel camped before the mount. And Moses went up into Elohim, and Yahweh called unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel. So again, we see, if we love the instructions, we see exactly who Yahweh is talking to and who Yahweh is going to make the covenant with. And Moses went up into Elohim, and Yahweh called unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, Ye have seen what I did. You are the witness. And to the Egyptians, and how I bear you on eagle wings, symbolically, and brought you to myself. Now, take note. Therefore, if ye will obey my voice, the instructions, indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a particular treasure. And note the conditions. And note that the people heard the conditions. The people was present when they heard the conditions, and the people will agree to all the conditions. Thus it reads, Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a particular treasure unto me above all people. Please take heed of the instructions, and please take note of the distinction that Yahweh hath made out of all the people that he have on the face of this earth. For all the earth is mine, and ye shall be unto me. Just like it's only one people, it's only one Elohim. It's only one Yahweh. He did not say, and ye shall be into we, as the rumors teach today, but the instructions, those that we supposed to love, tell us, and ye shall be into me a kingdom of priests and an holy nation. Not a bunch of people scattered wherever you at calling yourself a nation, but those that are gathered in that place under that name was to be a holy nation and a whole or a particular treasure and a holy nation above all. It says in the 6th verse, and ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and an holy nation. These are the words. These are the instructions which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. And Moses came and called for the elders of the people and laid before their faces all these words which Yahweh commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, all that Yahweh has spoken, we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto Yahweh. And Yahweh said unto Moses, Lo, I come unto thee in a dark cloud, that the people may hear when I speak. And don't forget who the people is. None other than the children of Israel. 12 tribes that denoted a nation and a kingdom. That the people may hear when I speak with thee and believe thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people and to Yahweh. As we stated in Psalms 78, all these words were to be declared to the generation to come, that they may have hope in all that Yahweh has said. It also tells us, if we pick up in the book of Deuteronomy, the 5th chapter, and it tells us in Deuteronomy, the 5th chapter, these same words that was reiterated 40 years after after what was said at Mount Sinai, while the children of Israel found themselves wandering in the wilderness because of disobedience toward that great covenant. It tells us in Deuteronomy, the 5th chapter, if we pick up at the very first verse, for I am using Deuteronomy instead of Exodus 20. For Exodus 20 allows us to know the very next thing that was said, which denoted the covenant, the instructions thereof. Instead of me, your brother, using Exodus 20 and reading through Exodus 24, I decided to use Deuteronomy 5 and then pick up at Exodus 24. Right now, we should find ourselves at Deuteronomy 5, and it tells us, as it told our fathers and their seed, and Moses called all Israel. Deuteronomy 5:1. And said unto them, Hear, O Israel, the statutes and judgments which I speak in your ears this day, that ye may learn them and keep and do them. It allows us to know that the words of the covenant, the instructions of the Masonic covenant, was to be learned and kept and done. And we know that Yahweh changed not, and we know that nothing changed in the covenant. So the words of this covenant would remain the same, just like the words that was found in the Abrahamic covenant would remain the same, just like you have not seen a flood to destroy the earth again, remaining the same. Thus it tells us in the second verse, Yahweh our Elohim made a covenant with us in Horeb. Yahweh made not this covenant with our fathers, but with us, even us, who are all of us here alive this day. It's not saying who are alive in the earth, but it's talking about the people that was gathered together that the Almighty made the covenant with. And again, those people were called the children of Israel. And it was speaking about all of them that was there alive, Israel being in the wilderness for 40 years. And it says in the 4th verse, Yahweh talked with you face to face. The covenant was made with our fathers face to face. It wasn't something heard in the heavens, nor was it something heard in the bottom of the earth, but it was something heard at the mount. And what they heard was their creator voice. And Yahweh said, I talked with you face to face in the mount out of the midst of the fire. I stood, this I is Moses. I stood before Yahweh and you at that time to show you the word, the instructions, the will of Yahweh. For ye were afraid by reason of the fire, and went not up into the mount, saying, I am Yahweh thy Elohim, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. So please take note of the instructions and the path that Yahweh put them on as he makes the covenant with them. And compare yourself, especially those that are teaching they are under the covenant this day. Note that the way you became under the covenant, you find no words written in this story. It tells us in the 7th verse, "Thou shalt have none other gods before me. Thou shalt not make thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the waters beneath the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself unto them, nor serve them. For I, Yahweh, thy Elohim, am a jealous Elohim, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, and to the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me." And I'm quite sure that includes those that hate his instructions and his righteousness. Note, when Noah was found perfect, walking with Elohim, when Yahweh blessed Noah, he didn't bless Noah by himself. His children was a recipient. So now that you are accepted, selected, told what is to be done and what is required and expected of you, in doing so, the blessings will continue to befall thee. Well, Yahweh is righteous. Yahweh is the Elohim of judgment. So in not doing so, it tells us again in the 9th verse, the last part or the last sentence, paragraph, it says, "I, Yahweh, thy Elohim, is a jealous Elohim, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, and to the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me and my instructions, and showing mercy into thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of Yahweh thy Elohim in vain, for Yahweh will not hold him guiltless that take his name in vain." If under the covenant our fathers took Yahweh's name in vain, they were never guiltless. They were always found guilty. The 12th verse reads, "Keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it, as Yahweh thy Elohim have commanded thee." And this commandment came and was made known under the Masonic covenant, under the covenant of the law. 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work, but the 7th day is and always will be the Sabbath of Yahweh thy Elohim. In it thou shalt not do any work, thy, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy handmaid, or thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy ox, nor thy ass, nor any of thy cattle, nor thy stranger. Please take note of the instruction and love them. That is within thy gates, that thy manservant and thy maidservant may rest as well as thou. And remember, don't forget, that thou was a servant, being afflicted in a land that was not yours. It reads, and remember that thou was a servant in the land of Egypt, and that Yahweh, thy Elohim, brought thee out thence, as Yahweh promised Abram in Genesis the 15th chapter, under the second covenant that we find in the story. It reads, through a mighty hand and by a stretched out arm. Therefore, the reason why Yahweh thy Elohim commanded thee to keep the Sabbath day. The 16th verse reads, honor thy father and thy mother, as Yahweh thy Elohim hath commanded thee, that thy days may be prolonged, and that it may go well with thee, where? According to the instructions that we are supposed to love. But our common sense taketh away. It says, and that it may go well with thee in the land which Yahweh thy Elohim give thee. Thou shalt not kill, neither shall thou commit adultery, neither shall thou steal, neither shall thou bear false witness against thy neighbor, neither shall thou desire thy neighbor's wife, neither shall thou covet thy neighbor's house, his field, or his manservant, or his maidservant, his ox, or his ass, or anything that is thy neighbor's. These words Yahweh speak into all your assembly in making the covenant. It reads, in the mount out of the midst of the fire, of the cloud, and of the thick darkness, with a great voice. And note, he added no more, nor will I. And he wrote them in 2 tables of stone, and delivered them unto me. And it came to pass, when ye heard the voice out of the midst of the darkness, for the mountain did burn with fire, that ye came near unto me, even all the heads of your tribes, and your elders. And ye said, behold, Yahweh our Elohim hath showed us his glory and his greatness, which we hope in this day. And we have heard his voice out of the midst of the fire. We have seen this day that Elohim does talk with man, and he lives. Now, therefore, why should we die? For this great fire will consume us if we hear the voice of Yahweh, our Elohim, any more, then we shall die. For who is there, please take note, of all flesh that have heard the voice of the living Elohim speaking out of the midst of the fire, as we have and lived? And remember, this speaking denotes the covenant being made. So we lived to be obedient to every word. The 27th verse reads, Go thy near and hear all that Yahweh our Elohim shall say, and speak thy unto us all that Yahweh our Elohim shall speak unto thee. And we, those that was a recipient of hearing the voice, and we will hear it and do it. That is the covenant. And Yahweh heard the voice of your words when ye speak unto me. And Yahweh said unto me, I have heard the voice of the words of this people, which they have spoken unto thee. They have well said all that they have spoken. Oh, that there was such an heart in them, that they would fear me and keep all my commandments always, that it might be well with them and with their children forever. Well, today it's not well with their children because it became not well with our fathers, as we read in Psalms 50, when they threw the law behind them and they began to hate these great instructions that we are reading this day. To the extent we got their children saying our dwellings is wherever we are at. It continued to read in the 30th verse, Go say to them, get you into your tents again. But as for thee, Moses, stand thy here by me, and I will speak unto thee all the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which thou shalt teach them. This is not something they stumbled over. This is not a contract of hide and seek. If you find me, great. If you don't, great. No, this is the words of the Creator. And these words denoted a covenant that he was making specifically with the children of Israel. And he tells us in the 31st verse, But as for thee, stand thy here by me, and I will speak unto thee all the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which thou shalt teach them, that they may do them in the land which I give them to possess it. They were given to govern themselves in the land that they possess, in the land that they own, in their dwellings, which denoted their kingdom. The 32nd verse reads, Ye shall observe to do therefore as Yahweh your Elohim have commanded you. Ye shall not turn aside to the right hand or to the left. Another way of saying that, ye should not hate the instructions. Ye shall walk in all the ways which Yahweh your Elohim have commanded you, and all of them, that ye may live, and that it may be well with you, and that ye, the children of Israel, that the covenant was being made with, may prolong your days in the land which ye shall possess, which was none other than all the dwellings that was mentioned in Genesis, the 15th chapter, the 18th to the 21st verse. In closing on this note, let us turn back to Exodus, but let's look at the 24th division of Exodus. Exodus 24. And it tells us again in Exodus, the 24th chapter, and it reads, starting at the very first verse. And he said unto Moses, come up into Yahweh, thy and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship ye afar off. And Moses alone shall come near Yahweh, but they shall not come night, neither shall the people go up with him. And Moses came and told the people all the words of Yahweh and all the judgments. And all the people answered with one voice, as we read in Deuteronomy 5. And said, also we read in Exodus 19, and said, all the words which Yahweh has said, we will do. And Moses wrote all the words of Yahweh, and rose up early in the morning, and built an altar under the hill, and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel, which makes up the whole nation. And he sent young men of the children of Israel, which offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen unto Yahweh. And Moses took half of the blood and put it in a basin, and half of the blood he sprinkled on the altar. And he took the book of the covenant and read in the audience of the people, and they said, all that Yahweh has said will we do, and be obedient. And Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people, and said, behold, the blood of the covenant, which Yahweh hath made with you concerning all these words. So all the words that we have read dealing with the Masonic covenant is under this great covenant the Sabbath, the statutes, the judgments, the testimonies, all of those great words were under the covenant of the law. And as it reads again in the 8th verse, and Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, behold, the blood of the covenant which Yahweh hath made with you concerning all, not some, not the best you can, but all these words. Then went up Moses, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. And they saw the Elohim of Israel. And there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of sapphire stone, and as it were the body of heaven in his clearness. And upon the nobles of the children of Israel he laid not his hand. Also they saw Elohim and did eat and drink. And Yahweh said unto Moses, come up to me into the mount, and be there, and I will give thee tables of stone, and a law and commandments which I have written, that thou mayest teach them. And Moses rose up, and his minister Joshua, and Moses went up into the mount of Elohim. And he said unto the elders, tarry ye here for us till we come again into you. And behold, Aaron and Hur are with you. If any man have any matters to do, let him come into them. And Moses went up into the mount, and a cloud covered the mount. And the glory of Yahweh abode upon Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And the 7th day he called unto Moses out of the midst of the cloud. And the sight of the glory of Yahweh was like divine fire on the top of the mount, and the eyes of the children of Israel. And Moses went into the midst of the cloud and got him up into the mount, and Moses was in the mount 40 days and 40 nights. So we see how the Mosaic covenant was made with Moses and the children of Israel. And we see that this covenant was made with Israel in the wilderness once they were delivered out of Egypt. And these words was given the children of Israel to govern themselves in the land that they was to possess forever. In the rumors of forwardness, we hear that it is said that it's the right thing to do wherever you are at. And we also read in Deuteronomy 5 that Yahweh added no more, and your brother said, nor will he. And that's why I don't. I teach the story as it is written. If the story tells us that they did it wherever, then that's what your teacher is to teach. But that is not the story of the covenant. So I don't add, nor am I going to be forward with the story by putting in rumors and being right in my own eyes to be able to tell my story and not this story. So we see that everything was supposed to be done in the place that Israel possessed, even being a recipient of longevity. It's not promised wherever you are at, but it was truly promised to be a recipient in the land that you possess, a recipient of longevity in the land that Israel possessed. It also allows us to know, dealing with this great Masonic covenant, if we take a look at the 28th chapter of Deuteronomy, it allows us to know again that a great covenant, which is called or known as the Masonic covenant, was made only with the children of Israel. These words were made and given to them once they were freed from servitude and affliction, once they seen with their own eyes the wonders of their Creator. It tells us in the very first verse, and this portion of blessings for obedience and punishment for disobedience followed what was told to them in the 27th chapter of Deuteronomy. I would like to pick up at the 28th chapter, but before I do, I would love to read the 26th verse of the 27th chapter. And what we find in the 26th verse of the 27th chapter of Deuteronomy is this rendering: Cursed be he that confirms not all the words of the law. Not just curse be he that confirm not all the words of the law, but curse be he that confirm not all the words of the law to do them. And these words, and the tenor of these words, constitute the covenant that were made only with the children of Israel. And all the people shall say, Amen, meaning they agreed, as we've seen in Deuteronomy 5, as we've seen in Exodus 19, and as we just read in Exodus 24. Then the 28th chapter, the very first verse reads, And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently into the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that Yahweh thy Elohim will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. Well, if your dwelling is wherever you are at, how can a distinction be made between you and the other nations when you in the midst? And all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee. And when something overtake thee, that's all you're going to recognize. That's all you're going to see, because it has overtaken thee. Like the curses today, all you see is trials and tribulations, trouble, pain, no blessings, because the curses have overtaken thee. If thou shalt hearken into the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim, blessed shall thou be in the store for obedience. And I think I see a store. Let's start that over at the third verse. Blessed shall thou be in the city, and blessed shall thou be in the field. Blessed shall the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy ground, and the fruit of thy cattle, the increase of thy kind. And note, it said, blessed shall be the fruit of thy body. And that's exactly what happened with Noah. Even though Noah was the blessed one, Noah was the perfect one, his children became blessed. So in continuing with the blessings, it tells us in the fourth verse, blessed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy ground, and the fruit of thy cattle, the increase of thy kind, and the flock of thy sheep. Blessed shall be thy basket and thy store. Blessed shall thou be when thou comest in, and blessed shall thou be when thou goest out. And Yahweh shall cause thy enemies that rise up against thee, the same blessing that Yahweh promised Abraham, to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way, and flee before thee 7 ways. And Yahweh shall command the blessing upon thee in thy storehouses, and in all that thou settest thy hand into. And he shall bless thee in the land, your dwellings, all of them, which Yahweh thy Elohim give thee. If you forgot, all you got to do is read Genesis, the 15th chapter, the 18th to the 21st verse. The 9th verse reads, Yahweh shall establish thee an holy people into himself, as he has sworn unto thee. If thou shalt keep the commandments of Yahweh thy Elohim, and walk in his ways. And all the people of the earth shall see that thou art called by the name of Yahweh, and they shall be afraid of thee. And Yahweh shall make thee plenteous in goods, in the fruit of thy body, and in the fruit of thy cattle, and in the fruit of thy ground. In the land, though, it says, in the land which Yahweh sware unto thy fathers to give them. And this swearing was done by way of covenant. Yahweh shall open unto thee his good treasure, the heaven, to give the rain into thy land not the world, not the city you find yourself being serviced and afflicted, but into thy land in his season, and to bless all the work of thy hand. And thou shalt lend into many nations, and thou shalt not borrow. Well, today you are the borrower. And Yahweh shall make thee the head. Today you are the tail, and not the tail. And thou shalt be above only. Today you are only beneath, and thou shalt not be beneath. If, note the condition of this great covenant, that thou hearken into the commandments of Yahweh, thy Elohim, which I command thee this day. And we talking about every word of the instruction, to observe and to do them. And thou shalt not go aside from any of the words which our fathers did, to where the psalmist said they hated the instructions, and threw his word, through his law behind them. Thus the 14th verse reads, and thou shalt not go aside from any of the words which I command thee this day, to the right hand or to the left, to go after other gods to serve them. The 15th verse, which will be the last verse I will read, it tells us, I'll read to the 20th verse. It tells us in the 15th verse, but it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim, to observe, to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Cursed shall thou be in the city, and cursed shall thou be in the field. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind, and the flock of thy sheep. Cursed shall thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shall thou be when thou goest out. Yahweh shall send upon thee cursings and vexation and rebuke, and all that thou settest thy hand into for to do, until thou be destroyed, and until thou perish quickly because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken Yahweh. So we see here the great Masonic covenant that was made with the children of Israel once they came up out of Egypt to govern themselves in the great covenant land that Yahweh covenanted with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the children of Israel. And seeing those great facts and points in the story of the covenant, we find another covenant, which is called the Davidic covenant. And this Davidic covenant denotes that there will be always a kingdom in the land that Israel possessed, And Yahweh found a man after his own heart to be selected to be the head of this kingdom and his seed forever. And it was called the Davidic covenant. And we can find this great covenant being rendered in 2 Samuel, the 7th chapter, if we all turn there, please. 2 Samuel, the 7th chapter. And it tells us in 2 Samuel, the 7th chapter, about this great covenant being made with this great man and his house. And this covenant was forever. It had conditions attached to it, but it was forever. As I stated, when we gave the definition of the word covenant from the Hebrew Concordance, the last words of that definition allow one to know that Yahweh have not broken any of his covenants. Thus, we find in 2 Samuel, the 7th chapter, the very first verse, and it reads, "And it came to pass, when the king sat in his house, and Yahweh had given him rest round about from all his enemies, that the king said unto Nathan the prophet, See now, I dwell in an house of cedar." And when he said I, is speaking about his word. "But the ark of Elohim dwells within curtains. And Nathan said to the king, Go, do all that is in thy heart, for Yahweh is with thee. And it came to pass that night that the word of Yahweh came into Nathan, saying, Go and tell my servant David, Thus said Yahweh, Shall thou build me an house for me to dwell in? Whereas I have not dwelt in any house since the time that I brought up the children of Israel out of Egypt, even to this day, but have walked in a tent and in a tabernacle. In all the places wherein I have walked with all the children of Israel, speak I a word with any of the tribes of Israel, whom I commanded to feed my people. And when we got fed, it definitely was with the truth. It was with all that Yahweh said, saying, Why build ye not me a house of cedar? Now therefore, so shall thou say unto my servant David, Thus said Yahweh of hosts, I took thee from the sheepcote, from following the sheep, to be ruler over my people, over Israel. And I was with thee wheresoever thou wentest, and have cut off all thy enemies out of thy sight, and have made thee a great name, like unto the name of the great men that are in the earth. Moreover, I will appoint a place for my people, Israel, and will plant them in your dwellings, that they may dwell in a place of their own, and move no more. Neither shall the children of wickedness afflict them anymore, as before time. And as since the time that I commanded judges to be over my people, Israel, and have caused thee to rest from all thy enemies, also Yahweh tell thee that he will make thee an house, just like he told Abram. And when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee, just like he told Abram. And note, Abram never had the thought that he was coming back to life to be the head of the house, nor have David. But based on the rumors and based on the forwardness of our teachers, we have been fed that David will return. And we are bringing this forth because it do not denote the story of the covenants. It tells us in the 12th verse, and when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build an house for my name. David never built a house for Yahweh's name, but his seed did, based on the covenant being made. And I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. Note, if he commit iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of man, and with the stripes of the children of men, as it is this day. But rumors and the teachers of forwardness have taught that since the children disobeyed the covenant, Yahweh had to bring David back, and that will be a breach of the contract. If that is so, we know it's not, because Yahweh have not broken anything. So we know that it will always be a seed of David sitting upon the throne when the kingdom is established or re-established. It continues to tell us in this great Davidic kingdom, this great Davidic covenant, it tells us in the 15th verse, even though Israel might find themselves chastised by the rod of man and with the stripes of the children of men, my mercy shall not depart away from him. And this mercy have a lot to do with the unconditional covenant that was made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their seed. My mercy shall not depart away from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before thee. And this also establishes that Saul was crown was cast down to the ground, and none of his sons sat upon the throne to rule the kingdom of Israel. And the Almighty in this covenant, this Davidic covenant, is reassuring David that these things will never happen to him nor his seed. Thus it reads in the 16th verse, and thy house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever. According to all these words, and according to all this vision, so did the faithful prophet Nathan speak into David. Then went King David in and sat before Yahweh, and he said, who am I, O Master Elohim? And what is my house that thou hast brought me hitherto? And this was yet a small thing in thy sight, O Master Elohim. But thou hast spoken also of thy servant's house for a great while to come. And is this the manner of man, O Master Elohim? And what can David say more into thee? And note what David said. That way you will understand the renderings that you find in this great story when you see his name coming out of the mouths of the prophets. And you will understand these great instructions and know that those words denote this great covenant that Yahweh made with David and his seed, his sons. Thus it reads in the 20th verse, and what can David say more unto thee? For thy Master Elohim knowest thy servant. For thy word's sake, no, not for the rumor's sake, not for the forward sake, but for thy word's sake, and according to thy own heart hast thou done all these great things to make thy servant know them. Wherefore thou art great, O Yahweh Elohim, for there is none like thee, neither is there any Elohim besides thee. And this is not just based on Brother Samuel, but it read according to all that we have heard with our ears. And when we read these words diligently, you will only hear that there is none besides Yahweh. The 23rd verse reads, and what one nation which consists of all 12 tribes in the earth is like thy people, even like Israel, whom Elohim went to redeem for a people to himself, and to make him a name, and to do for you great things and terrible for thy land, which we hope for this day, before thy people, which thou redeemest to thee from Egypt, from the nations and their gods. For thou hast confirmed to thyself thy people Israel, to be a people unto thee forever. And thy Yahweh art become their Elohim. And now, Yahweh Elohim, the word that thou hast spoken, this great Davidic covenant concerning thy servant and concerning his house, establish it forever. And do as thou hast said, not what's rumored, not what the forward is teaching, but what is written and said in this great story of the covenant. And let thy name be magnified forever, saying, Yahweh of hosts is the Elohim over Israel. And let the house of thy servant David be established before thee. For thy Yahweh of hosts, Elohim of Israel, has revealed into thy servant, saying, I will build thee an house. Therefore have thy servant found in his heart the reason we are able to read this prayer today, to pray this prayer unto thee. And now, Master Elohim, thy art that Elohim, and thy words be true. And thou hast promised this goodness unto thy servant. Therefore now, let it please thee to bless the house of thy servant, that it may continue, please take note, forever before thee. For thy, O Master Elohim, has spoken it, and with thy blessings let the house of thy servant be blessed forever. Also, we find in this great Davidic covenant, if we take a look in the book of Jeremiah, the 33rd chapter, it allows us to know that Yahweh changes not. And later on, in retrospect, even the prophets of old understood this great truth and knew that Yahweh had not broken this great covenant with David and his seed, even though we had people being right in their own eyes and was speaking forward against the Davidic covenant. Let us take a look and close the Davidic covenant with Jeremiah 33. For it tells us in Jeremiah 33, if we all turn there, please, we have one more covenant to speak on, which is the new covenant. But we are closing the Davidic covenant with Jeremiah 33. And it tells us in Jeremiah 33, if we pick up at the 14th verse, Jeremiah 33 and 14. And it tells us in Jeremiah 33, starting at the 14th verse, that the tenor of the words of the covenant with David has and will never change. For it tells us in the 14th verse of the 33rd chapter, and I think I want to close this with one more chapter. But right now, we should be at Jeremiah 33:14 And it reads, Behold, the days come, said Yahweh, that I will perform that good thing which I have promised unto the house of Israel and to the house of Yehudah. In those days and at that time will I cause the branch of righteousness to grow up into David, and he shall execute judgment and righteousness in the land. And note, we are reading from Jeremiah 33. The great King David and Solomon have been dead for many years, but it allows us to know that Yahweh have never broken any of his covenants with the children of Israel. Thus we see that a righteous branch will grow up into David, and he shall execute judgment and righteousness in the land. In those days shall Yehudah be saved, and Jerusalem shall dwell safely. And this is the name wherewith she, the she is the land, shall be called Yahweh our righteousness. For thus said Yahweh, David shall never want a man to sit upon the throne of the house of Israel, neither shall the priests, the Levites, want a man before me to offer burnt offerings, and to kindle meat offerings, and to do sacrifice continually. And the word of Yahweh came into Jeremiah, saying, Thus said Yahweh, if ye can break my covenant of the day and my covenant of the night, and that there should not be day and night in their season, then may also my covenant be broken with David, my servant. And how will we know that the covenant of David is broken? It reads, that he, David, should not have a son to reign upon his throne. And with the Levites, the priests, my ministers, as the host of heaven cannot be numbered, neither the sand of the sea measured, so will I multiply the seed of David my servant, and the Levites that minister unto me. Moreover, the word of Yahweh came to Jeremiah, saying, Consider thy not what this people has spoken, those that were right in their own eyes, those that was forward, that added and took away, those that hated instructions and threw the law behind them. Consider thy not what this people has spoken, saying, the two families which Yahweh hath chosen, he hath even cast them off. We know that's not true, because if that was true, then Yahweh would have broken the covenant. And Yahweh hath not broken any covenant. He hath even cast them off. Thus they have despised my people, based on these rumors, based on this forward teaching, that they should no more, that they should be no more a nation before them. Thus Thus said Yahweh, if my covenant be not with day and night, and if I have not appointed the ordinances of heaven and earth, then will I cast away the seed of Jacob and David my servant, so that I will not take any of his seed to be rulers over the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. For I will cause their captivity to return and have mercy on them. And one more place I would like to go quickly to close this Davidic covenant, and that place is Psalms 89. Psalms 89 tells us, according to the Davidic covenant, it reads, and allows us to know, we that have eyes and can see. If we pick up at the very first verse, and it tells us in the first 5 verses, it reads, I will sing of the mercies of Yahweh forever. With my mouth will I make known thy faithfulness to all generations. And this faithfulness also denote his faithfulness toward every covenant that he have ever made. For I have said, mercy shall be built up forever. Thy faithfulness shall thou establish in the very heavens. I have made a covenant with my chosen. I have sworn unto David my servant. And what is it that you have sworn? What does the covenant of David make up? It says, thy seed will I establish forever, and build up thy throne to all generations. Selah. And the heavens shall praise thy wonders, O Yahweh, thy faithfulness also in the congregation of the saints. For who is in the heaven? For who in the heaven can be compared unto Yahweh? Question mark. And the answer is none. Who among the sons of the mighty can be likened unto Yahweh? Question mark. The answer is none. Elohim is greatly to be feared in the assembly of the saints, and to be had in reverence of all them that are about him. And it also tells us in this great psalm, if we pick up at the 27th verse, and it reads to the 37th verse, also I will make him my firstborn, higher than the kings of the earth. My mercy will I keep for him forevermore, and my covenant shall stand fast with him. His seed also will I make to endure forever, and his throne as the days of heaven. If his children forsake my law, as we read, they will be punished by the rod of man and by the stripes of the sons of man. Well, here it continued to testify, if his children forsake my law and walk not in my judgments, if they break my statutes and keep not my commandments, then will I visit their transgression with the rod and their iniquity with stripes. Nevertheless, my loving kindness will I not utterly take from him, nor suffer my faithfulness to fail. My covenant will I not break, nor alter the thing that is gone out of my lips. Once have I sworn, and that swearing came by way of the Davidic covenant. Once have I sworn by my holiness that I will not lie unto David. His seed shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me. It shall be established forever as the moon and as a faithful witness in heaven. And the last covenant that your brother will bring up in the story of the covenant is called the New Covenant. And this New Covenant can be found in Jeremiah, the 31st chapter, if we all turn there, please. We will end the presentation on this note, and this note is the New Covenant. And this New Covenant has been already rendered. This New Covenant has already been spoken of. And this New Covenant has been displayed upon the children of Israel. For this New Covenant was mentioned for the people that found themselves in the Babylonian captivity. Thus we find in Jeremiah, the 31st chapter, witnessing this story of the covenant according to time and place. We find in the time of Jeremiah and the children of Israel being captives in Babylon these great words. It tells us in Jeremiah, the 31st chapter, I'll start or pick up at the 27th verse. And it reads, Behold, the days come, said Yahweh, that I will sow the house of Israel and the house of Yehudah with the seed of man and with the seed of beasts. And it shall come to pass that like as I have watched over them to pluck up and to break down and to throw down and to destroy and to afflict, so will I watch over them to build and to plant, said Yahweh. And just like we read out of Psalm 78, we are to declare these words that the generations to come might have hope. And we hope that Yahweh remembered the covenant that he made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and watch over us to build and to plant, as Yahweh have said. In those days they shall say no more, the fathers have eaten a sour grape, and the children's teeth are set on edge. But everyone shall die for his own iniquity. Every man that eat the sour grape, his teeth shall be set on edge. Again it reads, behold, the days come, said Yahweh, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Yehudah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they broke. So Yahweh is the covenant maker. He have never broken the covenant. But our fathers have broken covenants that Yahweh made only with them. Thus it reads, which my covenant they break, although I was an husband unto them, said Yahweh. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, said Yahweh, I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, know Yahweh. For they shall all know me, from the least of them and to the greatest of them, said Yahweh. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. Thus said Yahweh, which give the sun for a light by day, and the ordinances of the moon and of the stars for a light by night, which divide the sea when the waves thereof roar. Yahweh of hosts is his name. If those ordinances depart from before me, said Yahweh, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever. Thus said Yahweh, if heaven above can be measured, and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, I will also cast off all the seed of Israel for all that they have done, said Yahweh. Behold, the days come, said Yahweh, that the city shall be built to the Yahweh from the tower of Haniel and to the gates of the corner. And the measuring line shall yet go forth over against it upon the hill Garib, and shall compass about to Goth, and the whole valley of the dead bodies and of the ashes and all the fields, and to the brook Kidron, and to the corner of the horse gate toward the east, shall be holy unto Yahweh. It shall not be plucked up, nor thrown down any more forever. And I would just like to close on this new covenant by showing the words of another great prophet, which spoke about the Babylonian captivity, and that great prophet was the prophet Ezekiel, and we can find his words in the 36th division of Ezekiel. In closing, Ezekiel, the 36th chapter. And it tells us in Ezekiel, the 36th chapter, these great words of hope and restoration. It tells us, if we pick up at the 17th verse, and it reads, Ezekiel, the 36th chapter, the 17th verse, and it rendered these words of hope and restoration and redemption to the children of Israel. Son of man, when the house of Israel dwelt in their own land, their own dwellings, they defiled it by their own way and by their doings. Their way was before me as the uncleanness of a removed woman. Wherefore I poured my fury upon them for the blood that they had shed upon the land, and for their idols wherewith they had polluted it. And I scattered them among the heathen, and they were dispersed through the countries, according to their way, and according to their doings, I judged them. Past tense. And when they entered into the heathen, whither they went, they profaned my holy name. When they said to them, these are the people of Yahweh, and are gone forth out of his land. But I had pity for my holy name, which the house of Israel had profaned among the heathens, whither they went. Therefore say unto the house of Israel, thus said Yahweh Elohim, I do not this for your sake, O house of Israel, but for my holy name's sake, which ye have profaned among the heathens, whither ye went. And I will sanctify my great name, which was profaned among the heathens, which ye have profaned in the midst of them. And the heathen shall know that I am Yahweh, said Master Elohim, when I shall be sanctified in you before their eyes. For I will take you from among the heathen, and gather you out of all countries, and will bring you into your own land. Then will I sprinkle clean water upon you, and ye shall be clean. From all your filthiness, and from all your idols will I cleanse you. A new heart also will I give you, and a new spirit will I put within you. And I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and will give you an heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit within you, and cause you to walk in my statutes. And ye shall keep my judgments and do them. And ye shall dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers, and ye shall be my people, and I will be your Elohim. I will also save you from all your uncleannesses, and I will call for the corn, and will grease it, and lay no famine upon you. And I will multiply the fruit of thy tree and the increase of thy field, that ye shall receive no more reproach of famine among the heathen. Then shall ye remember your own evil ways and your doings that were not good, and shall loathe yourself in your own sight for your iniquities and for your abominations. Not for your sake do I this, say Yahweh Elohim. Be it known unto you. Be ashamed and confounded for your own ways, O house of Israel. Thus said the Master Elohim, in the day that I shall have cleansed you from all your iniquities, I will also cause you to dwell in the cities, and the wastes shall be built, and the desolate land shall be tilled, whereas it lie desolate in the sight of all that pass by. And they shall say, this land that was desolate is become like the Garden of Eden, and the waste and desolate and ruined cities are become fenced and are inhabited. Then the heathens that are left round about you shall know that I, Yahweh, build the ruined places and plant that was desolate. I, Yahweh, have spoken it, and I will do it. For these words are under a covenant, and it denotes a new covenant. Thus said Yahweh, I will yet for this be inquired of by the house of Israel, to do it which our hope is in, to do it for them. I will increase them with men like a flock, as the holy flock, as the flock of Jerusalem and her solemn feasts, so shall the waste cities be filled with flocks of men, and they shall know that I am Yahweh. I know I said I was going to close on this note. Let's close on Ezekiel 39. For it closes on Ezekiel 39, acknowledging Israel's restoration or being restored. If we pick up at the 21st verse, and we will end the presentation at the 29th verse. For it tells us in Ezekiel, the 39th chapter, dealing with this presentation, the stories of the covenants, dealing with the new covenant, it tells us, if we pick up at the 21st verse, and it reads, and I will set my glory among the heathen, and all the heathen shall see my judgment that I have executed, and my hand that I laid upon them. So the house of Israel shall know that I am Yahweh, their Elohim, from that day and forward. And the heathen shall know that the house of Israel went into captivity for their iniquity, because they trespassed against me, against the great covenants. Therefore hid I my face from them, and gave them into the hand of their enemies. So fell they all by the sword, according to their uncleanness, and according to their transgressions have I done unto them, and hid my face from them. Therefore, thus said Yahweh Elohim, now will I bring again the captivity of Jacob, and have mercy upon the whole house of Israel, and will be jealous for my holy name. After that they have borne, carried their shame, and all their trespasses whereby they have trespassed against me, when they dwelt safely, note, in all their dwellings, it says, when they dwelt safely in their land, and none made them afraid. When I have brought them again from the people, and gathered them out of their enemy lands, and am sanctified in them in the sight of many nations, then shall they know that I am Yahweh, their Elohim, which caused them to be led into captivity among the heathen. But I alone have gathered them into their own land, and have left none of them any more there. Neither will I hide my face any more from them, for I have poured out my spirit upon the house of Israel, said Yahweh Elohim. I will close on that note, and we hope and pray that Yahweh remember his covenant again and pour out his spirit upon us, that we may one day be a nation, a obedient nation before him once again. Hallelujah, hallelujah, and shalom, Israel. We will open up for any comments. Is there any comments or questions?
Right.
Is there any comments or questions? If there isn't any comments or questions, we can go ahead and end the presentation by reading Psalms 147. Is there any comments or questions dealing with the story of the covenant? A lot of what we read was self-explanatory, but it needed to be declared. That way we have no excuses. We can't say we didn't know, because it was declared today. If there isn't any comments or questions, we'll go ahead and end the night with Psalms 147.
I have a comment, brother.
Please make it.
I'll make it quick. This is Brother Gersh.
Jolo?
Yes.
I'll make it quick. You covered how Yahweh is going to bring about a branch, a righteous branch. He's going to raise up out of Israel. In one of the passages that we went over tonight. And then we ended in Ezekiel 39. And I noticed that the Holy Scriptures mentions something quite different from the time that Israel went into captivity into Egypt, because it wasn't considered lands or nations. And so I wanted to tie those two together because those two come to jump out at me. And I wanted to ask if you could comment on that with the people that are currently in Israel today and returning from the lands of Europe and the lands that they say they're coming from, America and all that kind of stuff.
I can't really tie it, but based on the words that we read, it allows us to know that Yahweh's doing. As we see in Jeremiah 31, 33 was talking about the branch, but in 31 it talked about in the 10th verse how Yahweh will gather them whom he scattered. So with us being scattered today, no matter what land we find ourselves in, even if you in the so-called land of Israel, you will still be considered a scattered product. And it will be Yahweh that gather us. And the only way that one could really expound on that, he will have to see that with his own eyes. We have words to declare, but the acts themselves we have to see with our own eyes. You understand what I'm saying? I could not tell you or connect nobody who is scattered, and Yahweh is the one that's going to clean us up, make us that people. So we will have to wait for those events to actually to be able to expound on that.
Yes, I that is exactly where I'm at on that. Even though the world is currently recognizing these people as being the stuff that doesn't line up with the scriptures, so to speak, although I'm careful to not to put a seal on it because Yahweh does things in time, you know what I mean? So, yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to see what your take was on that. Thank you. Shalom.
Well, I would also like to say the world also interjects that we are to do what Yahweh said wherever you at. They inject that your dwellings is wherever you at. Well, the Almighty in the covenants that he made with our fathers speak different. So even though the world might say, and most times the world is speaking forwardness based on the New Testament and all that type of stuff. So when you're dealing with the world and what is actually being said in the world, that's based under the New Testament. We just brought forth a story of the covenants that we find in our Bible, and it don't denote the new covenant, nor what the world going to say. But instead, the world going to find out why Israel was in captivity, why they were being servants and afflicted in those days, dealing with this new covenant. So, far as the rumor and what you're saying, I understand that. But like I said, I couldn't really expound on it and say who the people is, where the people at. If you scattered and Yahweh did the scattering, I don't know where you at. You scattered all on this earth, like you said, on the four corners of this earth. But he know who he gonna bring back. He know who his people is, just like he said, all the earth is mine, but I chose Israel. So he know everybody, and he know who Israel is. We might not. It says in the book of the law that thy remembrance should cease. So we might not, but the Almighty know exactly who his people is, and he know exactly who he made the covenants with forever.
Yeah, thank you.
We just hope that we be part of that. Just like it said, a mixed multitude came out with the Israelites. So even if we're not Israel, we hope that we be a part of that great deliverance, that great redemption.
That is exactly my sentiment nowadays. And just you brought up something because you mentioned the four corners of the earth. I was doing some geographical research a couple of days ago, and found out that in one of the historical documents, they mentioned the people that give us these history books now. They mentioned that the known world at that time, in 4 corners of the earth was, which I have a little bit of an issue with, but they say the known 4 corners of the world at that time was everything around the Mediterranean Sea, because you had Europe in the north and Greece, the Greek islands. You had the north part of Africa from out of Carthage, and then you had to the east, you had the banks of Jerusalem and Egypt. But there was much more than that. And his word says the whole earth, if I'm not mistaken. Did you have a comment on that as well? And this is for my ledger, my notes. So thank you.
I don't really have a comment on it, but a lot of times when you're dealing with time and place, and you're dealing with the time of those people, it's talking about the nations and the parts of the world that is known. Even though Yahweh foresees and He created everything, there was lands that had to be evolved, just like many of the cities and nations that have been up on the earth the last 500 years or whatever, that probably wasn't noted, in our father times, at least to their knowledge. That's why a lot of times when I take people to Isaiah 11, I make sure they notice the name of the lands that Yahweh got down. And all those names are in that geographical location. Those are not names of Europe and places like that. So that's in our scriptures for a reason. That was the knowledge of those writers at that time, and dealing with the thought of those people at that time. They didn't have America in their mind. You will see America written down. You don't see names like that. So when you're dealing with the scripture and the story is dealing with a nation, and is dealing with a nation that Yahweh selected and put it under covenant. All the other nations, as it says in Psalms 83, and it even named those nations. It talk about how other nations made a covenant against Israel. Well, it ain't all the nations in the world is not there, but the nations that was in their vicinity, close to their geographical location, those nations are mentioned. So when we teaching the story according to time and place, most times it's dealing with the places that they know and that was in close vicinity of the nation of Israel.
Okay. And I just want to add to that in my footnote. There were several great fires in great libraries that were in Alexandria and other places that were destroyed that contained a lot of knowledge about lands and peoples and stuff like that too. So I appreciate that, my brother. Just thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And yes, that's true. Great universities in Alexandria, great university in Timbuktu, places like that. And I think our brother Rudolph Windsor got a great book out that you can find dealing with those universities.
Thank you. I'll check him out. I wrote that in my notes. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Shalom. In closing, we will close with Psalms 147 if there isn't any comments or questions. And the song we will close on is Psalms 1. Let us all turn to Psalms 1. And it tells us in Psalms 147 in closing, Hallelujah. Praise ye Yahweh, for it is good to sing praises unto our Elohim. For it is pleasant, and praise is comely. Yahweh does build up Jerusalem. He gathers together the outcasts of Israel. He heals the broken in heart and bind up their wounds. He tells the number of the stars. He called them all by their names. Great is our master, and of great power. His understanding is infinite. Yahweh lift up the meek. He casts the wicked down to the ground. Sing unto Yahweh with thanksgiving. Sing praise upon the harp unto our Elohim, who covers the heaven with clouds, who prepare rain for the earth, who make grass to grow up upon the mountains. He gives to the beast his food, and to the young raven which cries. He delights not in the strength of the horse. He take not pleasure in the legs of a man. Yahweh take pleasure in them that fear him, and those that hope in his mercy. Praise Yahweh, O Jerusalem. Praise thy Elohim, O Zion. For he hath strengthened the bars of thy gates. He hath blessed thy children within thee. He make peace in thy borders, and fill thee with the finest of the wheat. He send forth his commandment upon earth. His word runneth very swiftly. He gives snow like wool. He scattered the hoary frost like ashes. He cast forth his ice like morsels. Who can stand before his cold? He sent out his word and melts them. He caused his wind to blow and the waters flow. He showed his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Israel. He hath not dealt so with any nation, and as for his judgments, they have not known them. Hallelujah, hallelujah, and shalom, Israel.
Hallelujah. Shalom, Israel.
Hallelujah,
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, and great night. Good night.
Good night.
Longer being recorded.